This footnote is about how being naked with 5,000 other people actually blurs the lines of gender.
So, Meka, I don't know if you noticed, but I finally saw your penis recently.
Oh, I mean, I guess I wasn't thinking much about it.
I was. Well, no.
I mean, it's a bit hard to know.
So, Meka and I both independently participated recently in a photo shoot that took place here in Meanjin by the world-renowned, magnificent artist Spencer Tunick. Yeah. So, tell us a bit more about this project, Meka.
So, he's known for covering landscapes, cityscapes with the bodies of bodies with
Just dotting dead bodies everywhere.
covering landscapes or cityscapes with a crowd of naked people. And I think this must have been one of his bigger ones.
I think so.
The biggest in Australia, for sure.
Yeah, because he's been doing this for what? Was it 30 years or something, wasn't it? It was marking 30 years?
He's had some very, very big ones in, like, New York, I think. But this one was 5,500.
Yeah, which is just wild. Originally, he was looking for 2,500 volunteers. And I honestly thought that maybe he was struggling to get those numbers because the call-outs continued, like, well into the process up until, what, like, even the night before.
I signed up a few days before.
Yeah. Didn't you sign up, like, the day before?
Yeah, while I was here.
Yeah.
It was pretty much the day before, because it was...
Yeah. So it was an amazing turnout.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I mentioned your penis, to anyone who's listening for the first time, Meka speaks very openly about his beautiful penis.
Paid a lot for it, like to show it off.
Yes. And up until that day, I hadn't actually seen it. Probably one of the few adults in your life who hadn't seen it up until then, right?
Not few adults. I would say most people in my life have not seen my penis.
Okay.
But of my close friends, probably.
Okay,
Because,
all right.
you know, it's kind of hard to find a time to just, like, whip it out with consent.
Well, this is the thing, too. It's like there have been times where you're like, oh, do you want to see it? I'm like, not really. I'm just never really in the mood to just look at a penis.
Yeah, it's a bit weird.
No
just
matter the
pulling it out.
context, you know? Like, if someone...
I normally make it an event.
I was waiting for streamers and party poppers and all of that, and maybe some fireworks to then have this grand reveal. Or, you know, like in Legend of Zelda, like when Link finds treasure and you get like that music, it's like, that's what I wanted.
Oh, the first
before
time.
the grand reveal.
The first time at like a party of about 30 other friends, it was like that, with like a whole show and dance.
A dance.
Yeah, like a little silk like scarf or something.
Yeah.
But then another friend thought it was a bit awkward, me just standing there with my penis out, so he jumped up to stand next to me with his penis out as well, just to make sure it wasn't like a weird thing.
Like a beauty pageant? Oh, yeah, that makes it a lot less weird. Two peni.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's just the
That's
sort of
what
people we
friends
are.
are for. For fellas. Oh, I thought I was gonna come up with some great ad lib just then, and it just went flaccid. Anyway, one thing that I loved about participating in the photo shoot was, for me, it did not feel. I've never participated in public nudity before.
Oh.
Yeah, never. And that was a common story for a lot of the people there.
Yeah,
it wasn't a nudist event. And I think a lot of people on the outside thought it was something for nudists, but no.
There's not that many nudists in Brisbane.
Yeah. Surprisingly, given the climate. But the minute people started stripping down, I just felt this aliveness. It felt so natural it felt like the most natural thing that we could have inflicted upon the story bridge. Very much a man-made construction, right?
Yep.
Much like gender roles and expectations are a man-made construct. And yeah, took off my clothes, no qualms about it. Thousands of people around me, people across the gender spectrum, people with such a wide variety of bodies that like I was mesmerized.
To me, it was really poignant how much everyone was so different that it made us seem so much more alike.
Yes.
Like, we're constantly being told this, like, we have to be this, like, these very rigid stereotypes of a man or a woman or the right type of body.
Yep.
And clothes are good at kind of hiding a lot of the differences we have and making us more samey, whilst also projecting kind of cultural stereotypes through those through that clothing, and projecting like tribes and ways we believe and think through the way we present ourselves. But once you strip all of that away, short of haircuts and some tattoos, there was no way to tell anything about people other than just we're all people. And like on one side you'd have like a young woman, and on the other side like an 80-year-old man.
Yeah.
And it all just, and people were so respectful, like not like staring at each other's parts and bits and things.
Yes.
Everyone was looking everyone in the eye, just chatting away, like there's no weirdness.
Yeah.
Like it was really like faith restored in humanity sort of moment.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the only form of disrespect that I felt on the day was from onlookers with cameras.
Yeah.
And that's something that that is a hill that I am willing to die on. That I even had some argument with some lady the night before online because she's like publicly posting saying, oh, where's a good place to take pictures from? And I'm like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
First of all, it's like we all signed consent forms for this very deliberately, meticulously planned art installation
for a photographer.
For a world-renowned photographer, for Spencer Tunick, not for like rando with a phone camera or even someone. It was
with a
more
telephoto.
well, yeah, it was more bothersome for me that like there were other, photographers taking pictures without our consent. And arguing on the platform that it's like, well, you're kind of asking for it. Everyone's like standing around naked. It's like, nope. First of all,
I'm asking for it.
yeah, it's like, where have we heard that before? Also, like anything that you post related to that, anything that you print off and hang up, it's all a knockoff. It's all knockoffs of Spencer Tunick's work. You didn't organize any of this.
Well,
this isn't your art.
I gave consent to him to take photos of me and his staff, and that's it.
Yeah.
I did not consent to strangers.
Yeah. So it's wild that like seeing people off in the distance or like on their balconies by the bridge. It's like, you are a creep, and that's just a reality that you have to live with.
You know who wasn't the creep of one of the people living there? Person who saw it came out, was like bit kind of like, whoa, there's a whole lot of naked people.
Oh, that's when I found you.
Walked back in, took off their clothes and walked back and was like, hey, is this what we're doing today?
Oh no, I wasn't there for that part. I was there for when the
really old couple were trying to hang out their washing.
Yeah, so the shoot started off at the Story Bridge. And then we all put our clothes on and moved down to Howard Smith Wharves, down to the Riverwalk area, did a few poses on the just on the walkway that's there, and then some shots in one of the side streets just coming off of the area. That's when I found Meka. And I remember you were like walking towards me with your arms open. You're like, hey. And I was like, Meka. And then I was like, oh. I was like, that's the penis.
I didn't even notice you doing that.
Well, I didn't point.
No, but I didn't even see you.
Yeah. Well, see, this is the thing. It's like I kind of like caught a little glimpse, but then it wasn't until we were actually standing next to each other that I was like, oh, wait a minute. That's the penis.
Well, like everyone had by that point got so accustomed to just penises everywhere and boobs everywhere.
Yeah.
It was like no one was even like batting an eye.
Yeah. But what was so amazing to me about your penis was like, I didn't necessarily have an expectation of what it would look like.
Yeah.
But then like, I kind of was looking at it a little more closely and I'm like, wow, that is actually like aesthetically very pretty.
Thank you. I also think Hans did a great job. Call out to you, Hans. Whoop, whoop. Nice penis.
Yeah. And of all the penises I saw that day, yours is the only one that I actually remembered. Yours is the only one that I actually like noticed. Even afterwards when friends were like, oh, I bet you see lots of boobs and butts and penises and blah, blah. I was like, actually, the thing that I remember most was the tattoos.
Yes.
Honestly, like that was the eye-catching element.
I also was very proud of how many trans people turned up. And like, it wasn't that even noticeable, except that like, I know, you look for your people. You're like, I see you.
Yeah, yeah.
You're like, are any other of us here?
Yeah, I ran into so many like friends. One of the first people I ran into was my friend Michael, who I have had dalliances with in the past.
My also friend Michael, I believe.
Hang on, I've lost my train. No, I remember like when I walked into the tunnel where we were waiting because it was kind of rainy at the beginning. Like I was there to participate just as an individual participant, but then like when I saw Michael, I was like, oh my gosh. The thought of like having a friend to share the experience with suddenly made it that much more like delightful. Yeah. Saw Rudy at one point, Rudy who was a guest on this podcast in the early days, and saw a couple of guys that I had been communicating with on the apps, which was kind of nice. But one was one of those like, I get back on after ages. It's like, oh, such and such is disconnected from you. And I'm like, ah, damn it. Because then you kind of see him in the buff. And I'm like, can I swipe now? Because I want to swipe on you. Please, mister. But I would never do that unconsensual. I'm just saying. Another time, another place, another universe, perhaps.
Yeah, I bumped into people I knew immediately, even before getting to the bridge. And then just a lady that I didn't know that I met waiting in the line to get into the bridge. We just ended up hanging out the whole day and making friends.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that was really nice.
I was delighted by everyone's willingness to just engage and chat. And I'm not like that at the best of times. I'm not a hugely chatty person. I don't really always gel with chatty people.
Could have fooled me.
If you put a microphone in my face, I'll rock your world. But if you just like pick me out of a crowd and say, hey, I'm feeling
like I did when I first met you.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, you, friend.
Like, okay.
And then I chatted your
Don't
ear
hurt
off.
me. Yeah. There was one guy. It's funny because, okay, so I do some work on the side as an extra for film and television, right? And there's a project, a huge, big budget, very amazing project I've been working on for the last many, many, many months. I can't talk about it because it's a secret, but
Secrets.
you will see it on a major streaming platform.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I saw him in the tunnel, and I was like, oh, hey! And I'm just like waving, smiling. He kind of like looked at me funny. It wasn't until like the next time I saw him on set that I confirmed that actually wasn't him. was like, oh, I saw you at the Spencer Tunick shoot. He's like, what? I was like, oh, fuck. There's some weird dude who just thinks I'm this, like, really friendly person, and we can't have that. But, what was your favorite part of that whole experience, Meka?
Oh, wow. Trying to put finger on just one thing.
I don't like what your eyebrows did just then saying that.
And I was coming out of my mouth, and then it all like came together, and I was like, oh no.
You're digging yourself a deeper hole here, man.
I know. I always do. Being in the city naked like that is an experience that I will never have again, most likely. It's just something you're not allowed to do.
Yeah.
That was like the kind of going right against the societal norms and what you're allowed to do.
Yeah.
And like, why are we not allowed to do that? Well, it didn't seem to be a problem for this.
Yeah.
Why is nudity? Because in Queensland, it's illegal for even women to show their breasts, which is like, there's some of our conservatism showing through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shows that like clothing and having to cover up is also a construct.
Yeah.
Like, I know the fear is that people are going to aggressively be naked, but as I always say to people, you can be naked and it not be aggressive or a like crossing a line. You can be naked at someone, and that's aggressive. That's when it becomes gross.
When it's non-consensual in that way. And that was one of the big, like, misdirected criticisms of the whole project before it happened. Of course, people always are like, oh, what about the children? What about the children? Children are going to be out there on the bridge at 4 a.m. going, Mommy, what's that? It's like, first of all, if you're hanging out on Story Bridge with your kid at like 4 a.m, I question your parenting. Well, no, not to parent shame anyone, but what the fuck? And like, there were signs posted about the bridge closure for weeks before this thing happened. Happened in the very early hours of the day. No one was walking on Story Bridge. It was completely shut. And even when we were in the Howard Smith Wharves area, there were signs everywhere. Nudes ahead, beware nudes ahead, blah, blah, blah. No one was going to be surprised at the sight of a naked person.
Except
Period.
the people who lived in the building. I'm assuming
But they knew. They would have had ample notice.
Yeah. But one of the older ladies that came out to walk her dog, I guess, hadn't read about it. And she was just like, oh, I just came out and saw this, but how lovely and refreshing for people to try something new or whatever. I can't remember what she was saying, but she just was like this, I don't know, probably in the 80s, tickled pink at the thought of people just doing something different.
Yes, yes. And there were, I mean, I'm not going to say that no one was surprised. Again, like, yeah, I misspoke there. Because, like, there were definitely some surprised looks from people later in the morning.
Yes.
Because, like, it was all done and dusted by, like, 8 or something.
Oh.
I think
Yeah.
a lot of people had left before then. But there was no risk of children running into the scene and, like, getting upset or, like, no.
And also, children aren't bothered by nudity. It's adults who are.
Yeah, but yeah, there were all these concerns about like it was going to be some salacious thing, like it was going to be some giant orgy. It's like no. What I thought was so funny, given that the Howard Smith Wharves region was still open to the public, even though there were like warning signs everywhere, was like between the bridge shoot and the Riverwalk shoot, seeing people lining up for coffee and like every other person was naked. So it's like a clothed person, a naked person, and then like blah, blah, blah. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
My favorite moment from the whole shoot was when we were still up at Story Bridge, just at daybreak. There was still all this moisture in the air from the rain that had been falling. It was still very overcast, and we were all lying flat on our backs. Yeah. and just having those moments to just look straight up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is bliss. We didn't have any of our stuff on us, no phones, no like watches, no clothing whatsoever. There were people like in wheelchairs who were there in their chairs as well. There was a lot of vocal stimming, which I thought was just delightful because it's like, of course, what else are you going to fiddle with politely out here in public when you're completely naked?
Notice, but it might have been me.
But it was just this moment of complete immersion in this experience that I just loved. It was just so like,
I was fairly overtaken with the overstimulation of the gross wet road on my back. But once it warmed up and I was still in that position, I was able to like, just because when everyone went quiet as well, where they made us all go quiet.
yeah.
And then it was just like,
It was a beautiful moment. I also strongly remember at the end of the shoot when people were starting to get dressed and they were leaving and everything. It was fascinating how much of a shift there was at that point. Where it's like, that's when people stopped the chatter or the chatting. That's when the phones came out. That's when the walls went up.
the tribes came back.
Even like standing in line for the lift, because I had parked just like at the top area overlooking the wharves.
Yeah.
Standing in that line, everyone was so quiet.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is weird. What is this illustrating? When we were naked, we were all like, woo, ah, la, la, and now we're strangers again.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really, it felt sad to me because it felt like all these people from different, like really different walks of life had come together and were just the same people. Yeah. We'd all come together and we're all just the same people. Just brings you back down to remember that like we're really not as complicated as we wish we were. Like people want to be so special and so different, and we need to like have all these things that make us different and why we can't get along. And yet we just kind of, it, to me it felt like a herd of animals. Like we are just animals, and it showed how much we really are just animals that think too much.
It's very much like, now how did we get here? You know?
Yeah.
How did it all come to this? How did we go from being naked humans running around all willy-nilly with our bits flapping about everywhere,
Willy-nilly.
all happily going la-di-da, to going, gotta check my email.
I
blame Near Ayal. Remember back when we were blaming him for everything? I'm blaming him for this now.
I also thought it was quite an interesting location in that the Story Bridge was one of the first big infrastructure, big pieces of infrastructure in Brisbane that really like changed the skyline, changed us from the natural landscape into a big man-made city.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like taking that, because it's its 100th birthday next year.
Far out.
Yeah, and then us all kind of like stripping down and being as natural as we can be on this very unnatural structure.
Yeah.
Well, we had a really good time. So, of course, we're going to go off all about it. Could go on forever.
Yeah, that could be like a whole other podcast on its own.
Guess all we can say is if you're near a photo, one of Spencer Tunick's photo shoots in the future and have the invite to attend, I would, even if it's outside your comfort zone, like stretch yourself, try it out.
Yeah. And if you're dating someone who's got a problem with it, he's just not that into you. And you shouldn't be into them.
I did know someone in that situation, actually.
Oh, no.
So, but I was very proud of them for being themselves.
Good. That's what we like.
Yeah. And yeah.
Cool. Ask us about it sometime. Bye.
See ya.